Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum to everyone who's watching this video. Now, this is in continuation of our analysis of capabilities. We had been talking about the SWOT, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. In the last lecture, we had talked about strengths and weaknesses, and in this lecture, we are talking about opportunities and threats, of how to identify opportunities and threats. Now, before we get into that, based on the pest analysis that you've already done before, or that has already been talked about in the previous lectures, we are now looking at what is the concept of risk. Okay, when we talk about the environmental risk, okay, how complex is the environment and what sort of risks and uncertainty do we have, okay, that would be there in that environment. So this is a very simple diagram which talks about uh, how what is the nature of the environment and what sort of variables are there in the environment, or the external elements of in the pest analysis that are in the pest factors that we have identified, they are there, and how much are they changing. So based on their degree of change of those variables, or the fluctuations coming in those factors and variables, okay, we can analyze, okay, what is the level of how much risk is there and what is the level of uncertainty. Okay, so obviously if you have a simple environment, that you have very few external factors that are influencing the company, okay, then and things are not changing that much, then it is called a then you have a low environmental risk, and you can plan more. Okay, you can do things with certainty. Okay, but if it's a complex environment and but but it's stable, that means that there is not a lot of fluctuation. Okay, then you can still go, you have low and moderate uncertainty if you look at the second quadrant on the right. Okay, then if you come down, okay, the second quadrant at the bottom, or third quadrant at the bottom, you have, if you have a simple environment but it is unstable, it is fluctuation, there are not a lot of variables that are there in that environment, or factors that are there in that environment, but it is unstable, then you have high to moderate uncertainty. And if you have a complex environment which has a lot of complications, lot of intricacies, something like an airline business which is quite complex, okay, and if you have an instability coming into it, a lot of instability, then you have very high uncertainty that would come in. Okay, so this is basically an overview of the environmental risks that would exist. Now coming to our main point or main topic, which is opportunities and threats. Now before we get into opportunities and threats, okay, the idea is that opportunities and threats, and just to recap on what we've already talked about, opportunities and threats are in the external environment, they have an external focus, or again you can also call it as external locus of control, that things that are outside of the company's control. Okay, and then the second most important point is that these things are when you talk about things that are either opportunities and threats, they would exist in the future. Okay, they are, if it's happening right now, then the company is tackling with it, then it adds to the strengths and weaknesses paradigm. Okay, but when we talk about opportunities and threats from that perspective, then opportunities and threats are in the external environment, and uh, that means that they are outside of the control of the organization, and they are things that are going to happen in the future. Okay, so that is why we did the whole pest analysis. The whole point of doing a pest analysis was to find out the forecasts. Okay, because the forecasts, which are things that are predicted to happen in the future, or scenarios that are predicted to happen in the future, those forecasts will be taken as our opportunities and threats. So if you look at our next slide, this is what we talk about here. If we have positive forecasts from pest analysis, they would be taken as opportunities. And if we have negative forecasts from pest analysis, they would be taken as threats. So in each area of the pest, for example, if you do the political environment, in political environment you identify, you do your forecast, and the forecasts that are developed uh, and forecasts are positive for the company. Positive means that if that thing or that that thing happens in the future, or this forecast happens in the future, then what will happen? The company's strengths will increase, or the company will become stronger, okay, or their weaknesses might reduce. Then that would be taken as a positive forecast, and based on that positive forecast, that will be taken as an opportunity. It will be identified as an opportunity. Okay. On the other hand, if something is forecasted to happen, a scenario that is forecasted to happen, and you've identified that in your pest analysis in the political, economic, social, technological, any of these areas, and because of that happening, potentially the strength of the company is going to reduce, okay, or the weakness is going to increase, then that would be taken as a threat. Okay. Um, Now there can be more complications into this, but just get this. Just repeat this and get this idea through, that what would be an opportunity threat. I'll just uh, talk briefly again. It is something that is outside of the control of the organization. An opportunity threat. It is something that is going to happen in the future. And how do we know the future? Well, we don't know the future, but how can we forecast the future? We get our forecast from our pest analysis, and the forecasts that we've identified in a pest analysis in all of the four areas: political, economic, social, technological. Okay, all the forecasts from there, we would look at it, we would analyze and find out whether they are going to, whether they are positive or negative for the company. Okay, and if they are, the positive forecast will be taken as opportunities, and the negative forecast will be taken as threats. Okay, right? Thank you very much. Have a nice day.